The Businessin Wales Podcast, sponsored by Sinclair Group, the business media for Wales. Hello and welcome back to the Businessin Wales podcast with me, Daniel Bevan. Now, of course, Cardiff is the hotbed of the Welsh economy. There's so many great things that we can say about our capital city, from the extremely popular nightlife to world-class events. So here to talk to us about all of that and more, I'm delighted to say, is Executive Director of FOR Cardiff, the Business Improvement District, Carolyn Brownell. Thank you so much for joining us, Carolyn. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm good, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem at all. Thank you so much for being here. Let's just start off for the uninitiated and welcome back from under the rock you've been living in. Tell us a bit about the Business Improvement District for Cardiff.
Yeah, so we are effectively a membership organisation which comprises of 800 businesses. That's all sectors as well, and all a range of sizes as well. They pay us a compulsory levy, and then we reinvest that back into the city. So we're almost a kind of not-for-profit with guaranteed income. So we bring in about 1.4 million a year and then reinvest that back into Cardiff to make it a sort of better place to live, work and play.
Oh, well, it certainly has been doing that over the next few years. We're expecting it to get even better as well. I wonder what you're most excited about being in your current role and what you're seeing the city turn into.
Well, I think that's I could respond to that in two ways, really, because I firstly, BIDs, so business improvement districts, getting voted in 5-year cycles. So we go to vote again in June of this year. So then the third term, if we're successful, will start on the 1st of December, and that will involve an expansion into the Bay. So obviously for us as an organisation, that's another few hundred businesses to add into the mix, but also some really exciting opportunities with things around, the Crossrail, the new arena coming in, the kind of development with the back of Central Station, and and what sort of crucial part FOR Cardiff can play in that, coordinating that as a managed space to make sure that the experience for people is a positive one across wherever you choose to visit Cardiff.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Cardiff Bay, it's had its gentrification, 20 odd years ago now, with the Senedd being built and so many wonderful places at Mermaid Quay. But we're almost reaching that new phase now with what you've mentioned, the arena, the metro. It's becoming this extension of the city centre in a lot of ways, isn't it?
And I think that's the important part for me of why, when I've been speaking to my board about why this is the right time, because obviously bear in mind, FOR Cardiff has existed for nearly 10 years now. So actually, because we're coming to the end of our second term. So why this is the right time is exactly what you've just said, because actually the arena, whilst obviously will be fantastic for the Bay, will potentially give a bit of a threat for the city centre in terms of actually that's 16,500 people. They will be descending on the Bay on a regular basis that actually might choose to where they're going to eat, where they're going to drink, etc. Now, it is only by, I think, having a organisation that manages both that you can have a coordinated approach to bring the Bay and the city centre together that will really be able to kind of galvanise on the opportunity that is the arena, but also offset any of the challenges it might lead to for other parts of the city.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to get too much into the events conversation because there's so much we can talk about it. But just quickly, obviously, the bid is looking for new directors. So tell us a bit about who you're looking for, and if someone's listening to this and going, "Oh, I could do that," how can they get in touch?
I think it was really interesting when we decided that we were going to, because we'd had a couple of retirements and a couple of people who'd relocated to new roles. And we're the first bid in the UK to have a dedicated ESG strategy. And as a result, I wanted to make sure that actually our directors are representative of the Cardiff community. So there was some changes that was therefore made within the kind of recruitment for directors. So you don't have to be an existing director, so you don't have to have experience on a board. You don't have to be a senior person within an organisation. It's around the skills that you bring. So it's around potentially experience around social value, ESG, CSR, but also there's practical things around finance, as well as experience with independent business. Because as we approach, hopefully, our third term, I want to make sure that I have the strongest board possible to be able to kind of guide me and the team, that we can have that kind of critical friend to be able to make sure that actually the plans that we're making now are going to hold us in good stead from 2026 to 2031.
And what is your day-to-day roles then, and engaging with businesses?
Mm-hmm. As I said, we have 800 members. So obviously, and whilst 1.4 million sounds like a decent amount of money, that has to cover all salary costs, that has to give them. So actually, the crucial part for me within my role specifically is around partnership working. So actually, I spend a lot of time actually speaking to whether it be Welsh Government, Cardiff Council, etc., around what we can do to really unlock the next level within our projects by sort of being able to kind of monopolise into the positive things that they're doing. So there's a big part of that with my role. There's also been a lot more around the lobbying piece. Recently, because we've got the Senate elections coming in May, we've done quite a lot in terms of trying to help shape and inform the political parties around the challenges that the high street is facing, and Cardiff specifically. So there's a big part of that for me at the moment has been that kind of public-facing, building up the FOR Cardiff reputation, but also making sure that actually the politicians, that whoever comes to power, and it's a complex space at the moment, will have an understanding from a business perspective about actually what would be useful for Cardiff and the rest of Wales.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the Senate is... or the Senate election, I should say, is absolutely taking a great deal of people's headspace at the minute. It's going to be a fascinating one. How are those conversations going? Do you feel like you're getting through? You don't have to necessarily name the parties, but do you feel like your message is getting through to the politicians?
We launched a manifesto a few weeks ago, and I think the sort of the main focus of that, not surprisingly, was business rates. I think there's England and Wales, it's devolved business rates, and the decisions that England made around support for hospitality has not been mirrored within Wales. So I think that there's been a big push for us in terms of their needs to business rates is an archaic system that desperately needs to be reformatted. It is no longer fit for purpose, but some of the decisions that have been made around the light touch changes to business rates within Wales are actually of detriment more to Cardiff than any other place within Wales. So, for example, with they've brought us back about different reductions and for a different size of properties. Within Cardiff, it's 100. If your rateable value is 100,000, Bristol 500,000. So now, when you consider that, when you look about investors coming, if they're looking at Bristol and Cardiff as options, where are you going to go? If actually you've got a reduction up to 500,000, you're going to go there, whereas 100,000 here. But the rest of Wales doesn't have buildings that big. So actually, it's only Cardiff that actually, when you look at rateable values of that scale, the building size has to be that, it only really impacts the capital. And as you mentioned in your introduction, with the economic hub. So actually, there just seems to be a sort of ill-informed perspective around actually where business rates should be going, because it's going to be a real detriment to Cardiff disproportionately than the rest of Wales, which is the exact last thing you need for the economic hub that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and of course, Mark Drakeford, the Finance Cabinet Secretary, announced a policy or a support package. I think it was 116 million off the top of my head. But do you just think that despite the support that's there, it just needs a rethink in terms of how the system is working?
I think it's interesting because I think that support package predominantly with the focus was for retail, so shops. Now, I think that anyone over the last 20 years will be able to see with the demise, not so much in Cardiff, actually, we've been quite lucky, but with the demise of major retails, with, your Debenhams, your House of Fraser, etc., that retail is changing, actually, and what people expect from their cities and how they want to experience their places has changed. It's much more around experience. So whilst, of course, retail has a significant position on our high street, you've got, the challenges of online retail, and actually the impact that has had. But you also have to appreciate now that sort of, food and beverage, so F&B, is a massive part of the draw when it comes to coming into places. So the kind of support that has been in place that focus purely on retail really doesn't actually, it shows a lack of understanding about what the high street truly, how the high street has evolved to become and what it means. But I think there's been some really interesting evolutions within Cardiff, that if you look at the old Debenham site, that Landsec are making to a city park. Now that's a really exciting shift change for us, because I think that actually it shows that people need to be able to experience and go into their places, and they need to feel welcome to do so. And actually, if there's nowhere you can sit, there's nowhere actually that feels safe. And actually, being able to have that city park in a prime retail position, and for very little commercial income in reality. I believe they're going to have little kiosks and stuff there, but you're not replacing it with a like for like with the kind of Debenham size of property. I think is a really innovative way that actually Cardiff has done something that I haven't seen a lot of other cities do, and I think it's a lovely almost gift to the city, that actually it's like, you can come here, you don't have to spend any money. You can come and sit and you can enjoy your city in however you want to do that.
What we're talking about is the Thriving High Streets Manifesto.
Yeah.
So you mentioned business rates. What are the other headlines from your document?
I think there's been part of what we've discussed as well as around how cities and places are invested in. So it's not just around building buildings, because actually, and I think I said this in one of my columns actually for Businessin Wales, that it's all very well building all of these buildings. It's like, but to what purpose, and to kind of, and how are those spaces going to be managed? And actually, what's the maintenance of them? What does that look like? Because actually, you can therefore, otherwise you can build these spectacular things, but actually, if you look at all the sort of student properties that have been built and stuff, now mostly empty because of Brexit and various other complicated things around politics. Now that has killed business in around a lot of those places, because actually the people aren't there to go out and get the coffee, get their sandwich, etc. and stuff. So I think that actually part of also what we've been lobbying for as well is around the mix around the sort of capital investment in buildings, and actually having a sort of slightly more strategic long-term view around what places need, and not just thinking we will build it and they will come.
Do you think that perhaps we've got it wrong in terms of the priorities previously to what Cardiff is now shaping up to be?
I think it's really interesting, because actually when you see some of the really exciting aspirations from Cardiff Council, particularly Welsh Government, that actually it's like, they speak about, wanting to bring in major employers, etc. So, well, you need places for those people to live. And actually at the moment, sort of the residential offering is expanding within Cardiff, but certainly for the last 10 years, that sort of residential build has been purely student-led. And I think that there was a heavy bias on that in terms of for international students, because actually the cost of renting those properties is extraordinarily high. And, as I mentioned before, I think because of Brexit, obviously, and various concerns around future political parties, that actually there's some trepidation, I think, for international students coming to Cardiff. And your average student doesn't necessarily have disposable income to be able to afford those sort of high-rise blocks with restaurants in and gyms and all that stuff. It sounds idyllic, and it has freed up some housing stock in Cathays, which I think is important, particularly for those lower income families. So I think there's been that as a positive, but there wasn't the demand for the sheer amount there are now of the student properties, and now they're all having to go through planning to be converted into non-student lets. But the planning criteria for a student property compared to a standard residential wildly differs. So it's cheaper for developers to do that, but actually it's not necessarily the quality of stock that you would hope for when we're talking about bringing these major employers and that kind of stuff, and what those type of people will want and expect from where they want to live.
I don't think many people would think back to their student digs and say, oh yeah, that's what I want to sort of raise my family in, kind of thing. But
with all due respect to my my home in Cathays on Rumney Street, no. There was too many rats in that garden.
Oh gosh, I lived in Rumney Street as well.
Really?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was right off. We used to just watch the mice run around the garden. Yeah.
Awful.
But I loved it. It was a wonderful place.
Absolutely.
Sinclair Group has been part of the motor industry for over 80 years. And in that time, we've learned it's not just about cars, it's about the impact we leave behind. We believe in driving change, supporting the people around us where we live and work. Because when our communities thrive, we all do. We offer new and approved used vehicle sales and service for some of the world's biggest motor brands. But what drives us goes far beyond the road. So whether you're starting your journey or continuing your legacy, visit sinclairgroup.co.uk. Belong for good.
So tell me then, 70 years as a capital is a lovely milestone that Cardiff reached last year. And I think there was a lot of discourse around the time of actually not realising that Cardiff was sort of declared the capital sort of by accident in a way, just in Parliament. It's a wonderful story of the Welsh Secretary at the time just saying, we've made a decision, Cardiff is going to be the capital, and have that be it. But I wonder if there's been a more exciting time to be in Cardiff compared to the last 70 years.
I think it's really interesting. So I'm half Welsh. My dad's from Cardiff, and he's 71. So obviously he is almost exactly as old as Cardiff is as a capital city. And I was speaking to him about this, and I think he was just saying, he was like, I don't recognise my city anymore. Now he means that in a positive way.
I was going to say, yeah,
stuff because he left and came back after joining the military. But it was really interesting speaking to him that actually now, I think even logistically, like the road layouts changed. The way you'd want to kind of go down things, and that's a cycle lane, or no, you can't go down there anymore. Oh, actually, there's a whopping great HMRC building in where that space used to be. So I think that there's been some really exciting investment that actually had really lacked, particularly in Wales, but certainly in Cardiff, that has certainly kind of picked up the ante now. That when I sit on a UK high streets task force, and that's some of the kind of major high streets across the UK. And I think there has been some, what's the polite way of wording it? There's been not necessarily the kind of the poorer cousin element about Wales occasionally and stuff. And of course, compared to London, we literally and metaphorically are. However, actually, when I start talking to them about, this level of investment we're getting, they're like these things, even just the major events that you've touched on before, they're kind of like, oh, wow, I didn't realise that Cardiff did that. And I was like, yeah, we did. We've got electricity as well. I think there's also those kind of elements as well around actually that it's important to get brand Cardiff out there. And I think that when you look at things around the tourism tax and some of the kind of conversations I've been having with, Cardiff Council and the kind of the leader there, as well as around actually like the opportunity here to unlock that promotion of Cardiff as a business and a tourist destination is so important, because I just don't think that we've done enough of that yet. We've almost been a bit more apologetic, because I think that such of the kind of friendly, nice nature of sort of Welsh people doesn't mean that you don't necessarily sort of brag about your place outside of previously rugby, not so much now. Don't really.
We lost the rugby, so we need to.
Yes, exactly. So you need
else.
to up the ante with other things.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting when you actually do look at that. And I have an understanding about, it's a bit like, no. Actually, it's like we are, it's the greenest city. Like it's one of the happiest places to work and stuff. And it's like, whilst yes, you might not get the salaries you have in Bristol, but it's like also the housing is cheaper. We've got excellent schools. So even on that basic level, but as you say, on that more strategic, with some of those kind of big risky decisions that actually have been made, you do see them beginning to kind of pay off in dividends. And I think, as you say, it's I think therefore, within the last 70 years, the kind of most exciting time that there has been. And I think that, to the sort of 10 years from now, what that will look like again is going to be really, really, really interesting. And like if we make the most of these opportunities.
Because I think generally people are quite averse to change. I think people like their familiarity. But I don't think anyone 10 years ago would have said that Cardiff is perfect the way that it is and needs to stay exactly the same, And all right, we live in a bit of a building site at the minute, but that comes with the types of transformation that we want to see, we need to see. So when you talk about the brave decisions, just how difficult was it, do you think, for the people in power to sort of bite the bullet in a way?
It's really interesting because the 70th anniversary, FOR Cardiff did a report where we reached out to both residents, people who work, and the businesses of the city. We had about 1,000 responses, so we had it's a good data set. And actually, some of those things that came through there were around. We were expecting much more negativity.
Really?
Because actually, I think when you talk about change, as you say, people can be quite resistant to change, and understandably, when as you say, when it's everything's been dug up, it seems, or actually the roads are disappearing and all that kind of stuff, it does impact you. Like, oh, I can't get my kids to school, I can't get to work and stuff. So like it's difficult, I think, for sometimes people to see the positive. However, when we found that data, and I think particularly around infrastructure and events, there was genuinely, I think within the event space, I think there was only negative was in the over 65s, and even that 85% of them were pro, because I think they understand the economic impact that those things have. And again, I think with the kind of infrastructure side of things, again, the data was really overwhelmingly positive, because people understand you have to do this to get there. And that really came through, which I think was I think the council were delighted when they saw that, when they saw those findings. But it also, I think, shows that I think Cardiff's ready for the change. And actually, whilst of course there is going to be resentment around the difficulty of day-to-day and how it impacts people's lives, I think on the whole, actually, people are excited about it. They just want to make sure that it's right and we don't lose our Welshness. And I think that really came through in terms of that character of actually just becoming a sort of homogenized place that actually is just a slightly different version of X or a slightly different version of Y. And there were some things around sort of cleanliness and safety and all of those kind of elements and stuff. But again, on the whole, compared to other places, performed better.
I think there's not a place in the UK where you wouldn't find people complaining about those types of things. And not to say that they're not valid, of course.
Absolutely.
And keeping the Welshness as part of a city that's changing. I mean, when I go abroad, I'm lucky to have been well travelled. You know, I've been to the Scandinavian capitals and things like that, and I absolutely love them. But you never come away from them thinking that didn't feel Swedish, that didn't feel Norwegian. So what do you think we can take from, maybe not necessarily just the Scandinavian countries, just the ones that came to my head, but what international lessons can we take to keep our Welshness as we change Cardiff?
I think it's having an understanding of what people think of as what you associate with Cardiff. I've spoken at a conference around this once before that I was like, how much do you lean into your reputation? Because I think there can be certain things around, actually, it's a bit sort of like great night out, all those kind of things. But the flip side of that can be the safety and cleanliness and stuff. So I think that you have to ask people about what they associate with their place and then really lean into that in the good and the bad, in the bad ways, and see what you can do around those things. And I think that, you know, for example, around things around Welsh language and culture and arts and those kind of things, it's making sure, I think, that those elements are accessible for people. You know, it's one of the things that I feel quite strongly about when FOR Cardiff does, different events, or we're doing different projects around stuff, that actually anything in the public domain is free. To make sure that actually is that we're not means testing people, because actually, you know, Cardiff has the reality, some of the most deprived communities in Europe. And actually, if we're going to get people to be excited about their place and actually and feel authentically a part of it, then actually they need to be able to be in it. Yeah. And to be able to experience it and to be able to kind of do you know what I mean? And I think that's really, really important, that actually you understand how a place has evolved and grown in terms of actually this sort of potential sort of breadth of different people who have moved here, and actually and what that will mean, but also just actually kind of really celebrating what makes Cardiff and what brings Wales. And I think there's different things that we could do, hopefully, around better promotion of that when people arrive. For example, at the moment you come out of Central Station, you wouldn't really know where you are. You've got sort of the BBC Wales bit of building, so you know you're in Wales. There's not really anything saying you're in Cardiff, and I think some of those other sort of European cities do a much better way of introducing you to where you are, because you can't move without seeing it. And I think that it's almost city brand, and I think Cardiff Council did that a few years ago, but I don't think it really ever kind of got off the ground that it could have done. But I think that there's better things we could do around that, around dressing the city and actually that sort of welcome and that celebration, so that your experience of a place, you know it's different, that you've crossed, you're not in Bristol anymore, you've crossed the water, and actually now you're in Wales, and actually it's like, and you can feel a difference. So I think there's lots of ways that more subtly but more obviously that you can do that, as you say, that I would argue that some of the European cities invest more in, and therefore is more obvious.
Well, I'll have a chat with our friends at Root and get some lovely welcome message on the Cardiff bus interchange new screen. With that in mind, you know, what about the communities in Cardiff who do feel a little bit excluded at the minute? And how are we going to bring those with us? Because the change involves them too.
I think it's really interesting because obviously from a FOR Cardiff perspective, clearly we're focused on the kind of the businesses and therefore the employees that become a part of that. And that kind of EDI, ESG space, I think has been really important. It's one of the things that, you know, we launched a project called Equality City to make sure that businesses are kind of trained, and it's a sort of kite mark for internal processes and policies to actually that make sure that regardless of where you come from, whether that actually that when you're within your employer, that you feel welcome, respected, and valued. You know, we've done some different training around that as well for people from deprived backgrounds. So I think that from FOR Cardiff's perspective, I see our space in this is around supporting employers with actually the employees that, you know, maybe don't originate from the UK, but actually can still feel like they, and there's an economic impact for that as well, because with staff retention and recruitment and that kind of thing, there's a lot of economic data other than just doing the right thing. So yeah, I think there's those elements, as well as I think just working with key partners around, you know, the kind of the police, Cardiff Council, etc., to make sure that actually that those organisations and stuff have an understanding of the breadth of what they're saying. And I think they do an excellent job around that, actually.
Absolutely.
Sinclair Group has been part of the motor industry for over 80 years. That's not just a number, it's generations of trust built on shared values, because family isn't just who you're born to, it's who you choose to stand with, and that's what matters to us. We offer new and approved used vehicle sales and service for some of the world's biggest motor brands, and trust, that's at the heart of it all. So whether you're starting your journey or continuing a legacy, visit sinclairgroup.co.uk. Belong for good.
Let's switch to the fun conversation, because we've spoken many a time about the events that happened in 2025 last year. I'll let my conflict of interest on the table. I love a gig. It's the simplest pleasure for me. But last year felt different. I'm 27 and I've been going to gigs since I was 10. I can't remember a time when Cardiff was quite as bustling as it was last year. And that's not to say, well, we had Oasis and therefore that was it. We also had Kendrick Lamar. We had the shows in Blackware, which, I went to a few, and obviously the Castle as well. And we obviously had the CIA still doing everything that it does, the Utilita Arena doing everything that it does fantastically. Just from your perspective, what was your favourite gig last year?
Personally or professionally?
Either or.
Personally, Alanis Morissette, it unlocked something in me that I didn't even realise was there. I really went back to being a teenager.
So you're a bit feral.
I look mad in some of the photos of this stuff. I was just a bit like, gosh, I was like, who knew that was in there? Yeah. That was in there. So I think, yes, Alanis Morissette, but again, I'm 41. So that was when Jagged Little Pill came out, was when I was a teenager with the teenage angst. So it was, it aligned perfectly for that, on a personal perspective. I think that the global reach was obviously Oasis, as was Taylor Swift the year before and stuff. But it's one of the things that we did a mural around Oasis coming, because actually one of the things that I think that my team and I are really keen on is looking at legacy, because actually it's all well and good, you get this boom, stuff, at least 70,000 people attending, but a lot of people just come in as well just for the vibes and stuff. They're actually just excited to be in and around it and just want to be a part of the fun, even if they couldn't afford the very expensive tickets to Oasis. But I think that as I said, we did a mural which said it was almost a screenshot of a tweet from Liam Gallagher when someone said, like, why are you starting the tour in Cardiff? He went, because Cardiff's. And we were just sort of like, that is fantastic and stuff. And then we were like, to it, like, can we put a swear word on the side of a building? But I was like, if we star it, it's fine. But now that's become a spot where people go and have photography, like, and stuff, and they go and have the selfies. They kind of do that stuff. Is it because actually there's now a moment in time is captured within that. And I know that kind of, Nick from the Depot has done a lot of that with kind of community outreach with music and that kind of stuff. I think that you have to understand that, I think, when you're bringing, and you listed off some of those big headliners last year, when you are bringing that scale of artist, that, it does put you on the global stage with scrutiny as well in terms of what that user experience is. And I think that Cardiff does a good job with that, but it can always be better in terms of particularly the sort of transport logistics and all that kind of stuff can be tricky. What I think that actually is, like, in terms of that kind of celebratory aspect of it and that kind of almost corporate responsibility, like, to be able to be a bit like, okay, we've brought this far, we had to shut the road network down, we've had to do this, but we're going to be doing this around investing in music or charities and that kind of stuff, is a really lovely full circle moment that actually you can appreciate that actually sort of the commercial aspect of coming in, business, like, I think Guinness, there was the most amount of Guinness drunk anywhere in the UK in Cardiff over the Oasis, a couple of days. So, clearly great for the economy stuff, but also
not great for the liver, though.
No, potentially NHS might struggle in a few years, but it's also around that kind of wider social responsibility element that I think that a lot of those providers have done a really good job at, because it is an important part of it, because we're a small city.
Absolutely. And I will say, like, I went to that first Oasis night, paid for my own ticket, I promise, and I only got him because I was in, like, the last ballot, because I'd gone through initially, saw the price was like 350 quid, and then it came to, like, the week before, and I was in that, like, last run. I managed to get them, and it was just the most amazing night. I remember being there and turning to my mate, who we went together, and I said, there's not a single show in the world that's better than this right now. Like there are so many shows that are happening across the world every single day. This is the hottest ticket in the world.
Oh yeah.
And that's the moment when I was sort of thinking about it, that I realised actually Cardiff is just, well, as in the words of Liam, Cardiff is, I'm not going to say it on air, but it's
apologies.
fine. Yeah, not at all. We will blank it.
My mum will tell me off. I apologise.
But you know, sometimes we don't shout about ourselves enough, and when you're in those moments, you go, actually, Cardiff's kind of class. You know?
Oh, you're part of history. But been in that arena, like in the stadium. Then you were a part of history. And I couldn't afford to be a part of history, sadly. But yeah, it's exactly as you say. But I think that that's what I mentioned before around when you speak about the kind of potential tourism tax coming to Cardiff and that kind of stuff. I think there's something to unlock as well in terms of the user experience. That actually, when people come to Cardiff, that actually it's like, of course, you can trust Liam and co to kind of do a great job. You can trust Taylor Swift to kind of like pull it out the back. You know they'll have a great time when they're in there and stuff. But actually, it's a bit sort of like what was the hotel? What was the hotels like? Actually, were you able to park? Were you able to kind of like what was the restaurant experience like? Because that's when you'll come back, and I think that's the return on investment for that kind of that wider thing. That actually people will then come back or tell their friends about like, actually, no, I've never been to Cardiff before, but actually this was great and we need to go back. And actually we've got an anniversary coming up, someone's birthday and those kind of things. And I think that that's where, you know, I potentially see a big part for Cardiff is that we aid in the experience. That actually it's like, we'll come and do a jet wash. We go to this, like it's that we put the hanging baskets up. So actually it's like, it looks and feels pretty.
Yeah.
Actually, it feels safe. It has like, you know, it's like, you know, there's the fantastic stuff that the council cleansing team do that they kind of roll in and roll out after match days and that kind of stuff. And you wouldn't know all the carnage that had ensued and stuff. But that for me is also a really crucial part of the puzzle, that actually you need to consider what the user experience is, and that it is, as much as you can control, a positive one, because that's where you get the ongoing economic impact outside of just those 2 nights when Oasis were here.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, and not to make this an entire podcast about the gigs I went to last year, but I will say the lovely anecdote was I went to see Slayer in Black Queer and another fantastic show. There was a couple I got speaking to from Tennessee who'd come over for the Ozzy Osbourne gig, which was the next day in Birmingham, and they were like, oh, well, you know, while we're here, we'll go and see another city. They decided to come to Cardiff for a few nights, watch Slayer as well. They were going back to Birmingham, and they were like, this is the best city I've ever been to. And do you know what?
I love that.
There was a little bit of
you got them on
pride
camera.
Yeah, genuinely. It was a little bit of pride for me, and I was going, I've never been to Tennessee, but I can imagine it's slightly better than here, you know. But you know, well, yeah, they were loving it,
particularly with the kind of music legacy around there.
Exactly,
You'd assume.
But then they were at a Slayer gig, in fairness, so maybe you know, Heartbreak Hotel isn't quite
not quite their vibe.
No. But it was one of those things, like it was almost by accident that they were here, and then they loved it. Obviously, you can't rely on people visiting Cardiff by accident all the time. However, it just goes to show that when they come here, they do enjoy it, right? And just an anecdote to say that, you know, these gigs do bring in people from all over the world.
Sinclair Group has been part of the motor industry for over 80 years, and we've never stood still. Because for us, it's not just about where we've been, it's about where we're going. We believe in progress, embracing innovation, investing in technology, and moving towards a more sustainable future for everyone. We offer new and approved used vehicle sales and service for some of the world's most forward-thinking motor brands. But our drive is always to the future. So whether you're starting your journey or continuing your legacy, visit sinclairgroup.co.uk. Belong for good.
And with that in mind then, how important is it that it's just not a flash in the pan moment? We've already got some fantastic gigs this year already.
This year it's bigger.
Yes.
There's more of them happening this year than happened last year. So I think that obviously it's making sure that I think that we have the breadth that actually is like a different variety of artists that are coming. As you say, Metallica to Katy Perry. It's
and I'll be at both.
It's a broad spectrum. But I also think it's also making sure as well that we stay true to a kind of grassroots music as well. And I think there's some really nice things around sort of like Club Before Bach and that kind of thing, that actually it's like you see those and being able to kind of unlock opportunities for those kind of artists during those large things. And I'm not claiming that obviously someone who's just played at club on the weekend is just going to then, be as a support act for Metallica. But I think that it's basically just unlocking those opportunities and those cross-promotional things and investment within that stuff from a city perspective, that actually we make sure that kind of legacy of ongoing music and talent, that actually they feel welcome in Cardiff to kind of nurture and grow and develop, but also become sort of fully fledged musical artists later on, that actually is like that you can, I think, and that goes back to the arts and culture piece again that we mentioned, that actually the kind of excitement you get from like local people when they see kind of local boy, local girl kind of take to the stage. And I think that's a really important evolution of this piece, that you have, of course, the kind of mega stars that kind of roll in and roll out, but there's also that element of making sure that we invest in the grassroots side of things to make sure that, we're not just relying on massive American artists rolling in and rolling out and that kind of thing,
100%. Well, no, you've completely anticipated my next question.
There we go.
But you're absolutely right, and I think if you speak to a lot of artists, it's in a lot of ways it's never been harder to make a living from doing what you love, whether that's because of the barriers that put in place from the music industry to all sorts of issues around getting paid for streaming, etc.
Yeah.
Live music is still one of those very few things that touring musicians can still make an all right living from.
Yeah.
But so if we talk about Cardiff, we lost the Moon relatively recently. Club of Abat is a fantastic venue, but it's still a little bigger than for some people. So I wonder if there is more focus on the bigger gigs, because obviously it's so good for the economy, that actually we are neglecting the grassroots a little bit. I know you've already talked about it a little bit, but
no, I think it'll be really interesting with the Senedd election and the political parties that come to power around how they prioritise the arts, because the investment in the arts in South Wales has absolutely just absolutely got really as low as it had forever, I believe. And I might not be quoting exactly there, but I believe it's incredibly low.
It certainly feels that way.
It's tough. And I think that actually it'll be really interesting about the priority that the kind of powers that be put to that. And therefore, because of exactly as you've just touched upon, actually it's investment that actually because again, you don't want these things to be means tested. Actually, you want people who are really talented, gifted artists in all different ways to be able to kind of pursue that. But actually, if there's not kind of their roots, that actually they'll be able to kind of unlock their potential, and whether that be kind of like support financially, etc., then it just means that you're going to lose significant chunks of that generation because of that lack of investment. And I think that that is a concern that I think it'll be very interesting over the next year as to how that irons out.
Yeah, it's a shame when it's not good enough to make good art, to make a living, right? And that feels like where we are at the minute. But Cardiff has got a fantastic arts history, and no doubt will continue in some way, shape, or form. They'll always find a way. And just to round things off, we've had a wonderful conversation. FOR Cardiff is one of the sponsors for the Women in Wales Awards. Just start us off by why did you want to get involved?
I think it's kind of multifaceted, really. I mean, I'm the first female leader of a city bid in Wales. That's a context in 20 years. So I think, I'm a staunch feminist and believe strongly in supporting women around actually the sort of evolution within their careers. And, we have by coincidence, we have a predominantly female team in FOR Cardiff. But I think that for me, it's so important with things like awards that, and particularly for women, that actually we consider that people need to see people who look and sound like them win business awards. And it's only by being able to kind of invest in those type of awards to be able to kind of raise the profile of that. And, we can promote to, our membership and that kind of thing about those things, that actually we'll be able to look at that. Because I think you also have to look at, whilst obviously clearly I'm a woman, you have to look at intersectionality as well. And it's like, I'm a white woman from a relatively privileged background. I've had a good education, etc. So actually, whilst I am a woman, I cannot compare my lived experience to someone from a Somali community who lives in Butetown. It's not the same. And stuff. So actually, it's like we need to make sure that awards like this actually are put in front of different types, of like women from different types of, backgrounds, ethnicity, age, all of those different types of roles. So that particularly Cardiff, when the kind of leaders of tomorrow are actually looking at those. They feel that actually Cardiff is the place that actually they can stay here, so we can maintain their talent, we can retain them here within Cardiff, because they see and feel that women like them are able to be successful. So I think that was one of the main things for me, that actually it felt an important thing to be a part of, to try and really kind of raise the profile of the breadth of amazing women that we have here in Wales.
And I've been asking everyone who's involved this question, who the most important woman to you is. Now, that could be personally, it could be professionally. James from Hello Starling had a lovely answer of his friend Hayley, who started Go Compare. I'm sure you're aware. So
Of course.
I wonder who yours is.
Mine would be a personal answer. I've already touched upon the fact that my father was in the military and stuff, so he was away a lot. You know, they go on exercise or war, so you know they're off. They're doing a lot of things. But my mum has had to live all around the world in different places with two girls that she brought up to be independent, strong women, and actually all the while just having to follow my dad around, and actually but actually the strength to be able to do that in different countries with your husband's not there, and actually is like in very dangerous situations, bear in mind you don't know if he's coming home, is absolutely amazing. So I think that actually it just shows that actually that whilst obviously I have gone into the kind of more corporate kind of career type of route, my mum was a housewife, but actually still was able to raise strong independent women, which I think is just so important. So yeah, it would be the rather cliched but honest answer, my mum.
Oh, no cliches at all. It's fantastic. And we finish all these podcasts by asking everyone the same question, which is, if you had any advice for your younger self, what would it be? I know.
Oh, God.
Everyone gets that answer. Gets that reaction, I should say.
I would just say, I think that particularly the early starts of my career, that actually it's a bit like everyone else is as scared as you are. It's like you're sitting there thinking, oh God, I don't really know. You're thinking, oh, I think I know. I'm not really sure. It's like, as I've got older and met sort of much more important people than me, you actually think, oh no, we're all thinking it. And I think that's actually that having that kind of transparency and rawness around actually, I think would unlock so much more confidence and ability for women, particularly women, but people, if they understand that early on, that actually it's like you're not invincible, and actually understanding what you're not good at or what you need to develop into, or what you're like, you know, what training may be required or whatever it might be, will unlock and create so much more mental health, I think, for people, because actually it's like you'll just be you'll just understand yourself so much better, rather than having to kind of potentially pretend a bit all the time.
Fake it till you make it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You took the words out of my mouth.
Oh, wonderful. Well, Carolyn, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming in, and hopefully we'll have a conversation again soon.
Great, thank you so much.
The Businessin Wales Podcast, sponsored by Sinclair Group, the business media for Wales.